podcast. This is Ghost Guy Daniel. Oh, I still got my my calming music playing in the background. It's all part of the process, people. I'm sitting here at my desk, my office, got my nice warm coffee. I'm ready to talk to the air. Well, you guys. So what's in the show today? I'm going to talk a little bit about what some people find to be terrifying, something known as sleep paralysis, and maybe its connection to the paranormal. And in the Ghosts Are Real section, I'm going to be talking about St. Catharines, Ontario, and the infamous Blue Ghost Tunnel. Now, for those who are not familiar, do a quick search on this tunnel. It is a very creepy looking place. I do have a bit of a history with it, and I want to talk a little bit about that and the stories behind it. And for the strange news segment, I'm going to be talking about Stephen King's favorite hotel, the Stanley in Colorado. This is the hotel that the Overlook in The Shining was based on. Stephen King stayed there, and that's where he wrote The Shining, so it gave him his inspiration for that amazing book. It might be featured in the article, I don't know, I could be repeating myself, because as you know, when I do that segment, I am reading it for the first time as well. At the same time that you're hearing it, I am hearing it too. I want to mention a little bit about a book that I've written. Now, I mentioned a tad on social media, just kind of hinted on it, and it's not new. I actually wrote it last year, and just the time to get a comfortable feeling with it. I've been editing it. I think I'm on my 6th draft right now. Hopefully 6 will be the charm, and that will be the end of it. Not a huge novel. I think it ends up being about 150 pages once it's in that format. But you know, I put my heart and soul in it. It's something that I'm quite proud of, and even as I continue to edit draft after draft, I feel comfortable with it, and I love the story. Of course, it is about ghosts. Of course, it is kind of a spooky story. It is my wheelhouse. So I will be releasing that hopefully within the next month or so. General idea behind it, I delve into psychic abilities. I delve into ghosts in the spirit world, and it's a story surrounding a guy who has to find his lineage. So he's from a very prominent family related to the paranormal, to be able to hunt down and stop evil spirits and demons, him coming back to his roots, that general synopsis of the story, and then what happens during that. I'm attempting not to give any spoilers, not that anybody really cares at this point, but I'm going to post it out. It'll be in Kindle format on Amazon, of course. I will keep the price low. This is, the beauty of self-publishing. I sent out a few letters to publishers to see if anybody would have any interest, and the 4 letters that I sent out, I got 1 rejection, and the rest were all just like no shows. Which it's during COVID as well. I didn't expect much, and it's my first time actually seriously writing a book. So again, I don't think it's perfect, but again, I'm proud of it. I love the story. I'm not much of a salesperson. I probably shouldn't get into that business. This is just, me telling you how I feel about it. So hopefully within the next month or so, I will release it. I'll post it on the Ghost Guy Daniel Facebook page. So just search Ghost Guy Daniel on Facebook, and the Ghost Walks Facebook page will probably have a little feature on it as well. I wanted to give an update on my OBE practice. This is out of body experiences. The update is no update. I've been working on it every single night. I try and get the meditative state and see if I can initiate it and get out of my body. But I've had no success. There was the one evening that I got close to it, So I don't know if anybody here listening has done this before, or maybe that you've been successful with it, and you're looking at me and saying, "Hey, it's not that hard. Go ahead, do it." Or you're listening to me and going, "This guy's a loon, and he's saying crazy stuff." Whatever camp you're in, note the feeling that comes when you get close to it is almost like somebody described it like you're being covered with a lead blanket. And I can feel that, but basically your body will go numb, but in a pleasurable way. So you're not freaked out in any way. It's sort of like if you get into a deep meditative state, there's that feeling of bliss that comes along with it. So you get to that certain level, yes, your body goes numb. It does feel like there's a bit of a weight on you. And I felt personally in the center of my chest was sort of a bit of a blissful feeling. And then at that point, I attempted to float or spin or flip over and be able to experience the out-of-body experience. But every time that I got close and I felt that vibration, I had a pain in the back of my neck that brought me back. So my body, I don't know if it was trying to tell me that I'm not ready yet. Because funny, since I had that experience, I haven't even gotten close. And again, it's every single night I'm trying, and it's just seems to be going the wrong direction. So we'll see what happens. I think we can continue on keeping in a meditative state. It could be the cycles of the moon. It could be the energy in my own life. It could be whatever. I'm hoping to be successful, and that way I can come back and give you guys some really cool advice and maybe some stories of experiences. Who knows? So that's a quick update on things. Nothing else to really report at the moment. For the ghost walks, if anybody's interested, I am personally going to be leading one of the tours in December 26th, so right after Christmas. Boxing Day's tour, which is Saturday, December 26th, that will be mine. So if anybody wants to come on my tour and hear the ghost stories and the dark and strange history of Niagara-on-the-Lake, I would love to have you there. Just ghostwalks.com and click Niagara-on-the-Lake. So as I plugged, I want to talk a little bit about something known as sleep paralysis. Now I know the theory of what it is, and I'm just quickly pulling up the Google machine here. But to be able to describe to you exactly what it is, okay, this is perfect. Sleep paralysis is a state during waking up or falling asleep in which a person is aware but unable to move or speak. Now, during an episode, it says one may hallucinate, and often results they feel fear for obvious reasons. So basically, waking up or ending up in a state where you are unable to move or speak. Now, this is, I'm sure, a fear for many people, and they've used it in horror movies so many times over the years, to not be able to have control over your own body and being trapped in it. Huge fear. There is scientific explanation for it. Many doctors and scientists could tell you what is causing it, like what's happening in the brain when sleep paralysis occurs to someone. But there could be a ghostly side to it as well. So I want to kind of just think about that for a second. Now, if you have this experience and scientists are monitoring your brain while it's occurring, I'm sure certain parts of the brain are lighting up and certain things are happening that could prove why your body is unable to move in that moment. And they can say, okay, that's science's explanation. But I've never had anybody explain to me deep down, like, what's the next level down? Yes, that is what the brain is doing, but why does it occur? So my theory, and hopefully I don't sound a little cuckoo here, but my theory has always been, if you dive down deep into something, where science has explained it, you dive down deep enough that there's always going to be that spiritual element at the bottom, that mystery of, why is it happening? Science can state, okay, this is what occurs when it is happening, but there's no why. What's underneath that? The same thing with life itself. The Big Bang Theory states that there's this massive bang, this explosion of energy, and all of reality came from that. But why did it occur? Why are we here? Why did evolution happened and we evolved into the human beings that we are today? But why? And being here, what's the purpose, if there is any purpose? And my body moves and I think, and there's energy within me that causes all this. But again, how is that occurring? Where is that coming from? We call it spiritual, but there's no explanation for what that is. So to be able to state that sleep paralysis is a scientific explained experience doesn't really explain why it's occurring. So this is kind of where I can jump in and say, okay, again, we're talking about the unknown, and I definitely do not have an explanation for you. But isn't it possible that there could be something not so much ghostly, in the sense that something external is coming in and causing the problem, which I do believe is possible, that an external element or energy can attempt to control you and possession within that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But from a spiritual level, what in your own energy is creating it? Now, there's the idea of thought, that we get so caught up in our stresses, and that your stresses create a reality in your mind, so that if something bad happens to you, you immediately assume that everything related to that tragic event is also a problem, and you create this reality in your mind, eventually spiraling out into a very depressed state. And then the amount of disease and unrest that comes from that depression can cause all sorts of things, which might include sleep paralysis. So that is like a thought of the origins, but the answer of why it occurs, I don't know. Now, I do have a personal experience with this. It happened when I was in my early 20s, and I was kind of getting into psychic abilities at the time with OBs. I was attempting to do out-of-body experiences back then too, and of course I didn't continue on with it. I've taken a 20 to 30 year break. 30's too much. 20 to 25 year break, and now getting back into it again because I'm fascinated. So I was kind of exploring that, and I was opening myself up to these things. Now, I want you to know, at no point was I ever scared of it. So fear didn't cause any type of hallucination here. I was amazed by it, and I was amazed by the amount of focus that my studies was giving me. So for that reason, when this situation occurred, yes, I did have a focus on it, but no, it wasn't something where fear would have caused it to occur. So, moving right along, the story is one evening I was sleeping in my room, and I don't know, might have been around midnight or so. I never really looked at the clock, but it was dark in the room, and I was facing towards the wall on the one side of the bed with my back to an empty space on the other side of the bed. It was a queen size. And I was having a conversation. Now, this is the part that is a bit strange, because I was half asleep and I was talking to a woman long before I was in any serious relationship. I definitely wasn't married at the time. There was nobody there. But the conversation was very normal to me. It was like it's happened 1,000 times before. And I was just like very calm with it. She would say something, I would say something. It's not a dream. I am awake. I am in that state where I'm, almost back asleep again, but I am awake. I am conscious to what's going on. And then about maybe a minute or so into the conversation, I realized this shouldn't be happening. There's nobody there. And I swung over. I flipped over in the bed. And I remember I got about halfway. I got on my back. And that's when everything just kind of stopped. Now, I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't move my legs. And as well, my eyes happened to be closed when I was flipping over. I was going to open them, but it never happened. I was put into this paralysis before it occurred. So I was just seeing darkness. And I remember trying to force my eyes open. And there's like a bit of light from the street lights coming through the window. And I saw a shadow. There was something on top of me. And I saw the head and the shoulders. But I couldn't open my eyes completely to see it, and it was just like through the slit, I could see the shadow over top of me. And then after maybe, it feels like a lifetime. It feels like a lifetime when you're in the middle of it, and I think at that point I was very new to this sleep paralysis, and I didn't really know what to do. But something did come in and tell me. I don't know how to explain this. That's why I'm kind of fumbling here. Something did kind of come in and tell me to relax. And that was a wonderful lesson. And anybody having sleep paralysis, if you haven't had this lesson yet, this is what I offer to you. Relax. Tell yourself. Think the words. Just relax, or I am relaxed. And then feel your body relax. I know it is terrifying in the moment. You can't move your arms and legs. It's like you're paralyzed or you're trapped. And especially for me, I can see through the slits. There might be something on my chest looking down at me. It's not easy to relax. But if you can get to that point that you're used to it, the sleep paralysis experience is actually not so bad. So the minute that you're relaxed and you can tell yourself to come back to normal, then it won't be like waking up, but it'll be like being refreshed, being reset, so that your arms and legs will come back. There might be a little bit of numbness and vibration that remains, and you'll be back to normal. So that was my own personal experience. I think it's ghostly. I don't know. I'm sure there's scientists who'll say your brain was hallucinating the shadow that was on top of you, and that this is all part and parcel of having sleep paralysis. I'm sure there's proof of that. I don't know. For me in the moment, it felt very strange, and of the other half of hearing the woman talk to me makes me think that it was something ghostly. It's my own personal opinion. If you have any questions, or you want to offer any advice or concerns about what I just said, you can send me the questions through ggdaniel@ghostwalks.com, or message me through Facebook at ghostguydaniel. But I kind of teased, before I move on to the next segment, I kind of teased the idea of possession. Now, out-of-body experiences aside, this sleep paralysis could be a part of that too, because I was kind of studying it at the time. And, one of the things is to put your body to sleep while your mind is still awake, and that you'll be able to leave your body that way. So it might be related to that. But what I've noticed as well is, from my own experience, and I'm going to do the Cole's Notes version of this, real possession. It's not like what you see in the movies. Real possession is, in my opinions, when an outside energy attempts to take over your living energy. I've seen this a couple times in action, and what I've noticed is one of the first things that occurs in an extreme possession is that the person will go numb, so that they can't move their arms and legs. The couple times that I've seen it, it's been while they were in a standing position, like during a seance, and not even sitting. We were standing during that time, and they would go numb, so they couldn't move their arms and legs. And just like sleep paralysis, it's the same idea, that as long as they relax, Their natural living energy seems to come in and be able to push whatever's trying to possess them away. Not like the horror movies, so nobody's walking around with the ghost inside them and murdering people. It's actually much less dramatic than that. So it's just staying calm and letting it pass. So there's a parallel there. From my own experience, in my own opinion, there's a parallel between what I've seen with possession and sleep paralysis. I don't know if that explains sleep paralysis in a different way. Maybe you could call it sleep possession. I don't know. But I just want to, put those thoughts out there. Love to have a discussion. I think once people actually start listening to this podcast, I can't wait to have discussions with folks in regards to this. It is definitely one of my favorite things to do. But with saying that, this is the time I'm going to do a bit of a pause. Again, you can pause on your side to go longer. If you have any type of ghostly equipment, EMFs, recorders, cameras, we're talking about ghosts, we're talking about possessions, who knows? Maybe something's been stirred up. So I'll take a pause longer if you like, see if something happens. Are you possessed? I hope not. Okay, moving right along. This is the Ghosts Are Real segment. This is when I go back into my own personal experience or experiences that I've been aware of in the past, where stories or of things have been brought to my attention that prove that ghosts are real, and through history and validation and occurrences that have happened, to different people over generations, all along the same standard or the same lines that prove that it is a specific type of ghost. Now, for this, I want to talk about the Blue Ghost Tunnel. Now, for people who are local to where I'm from, which is southern Ontario up in Canada, this location might be known. Because in the city of St. Catharines, they have a tunnel system. Main reason is the Welland Canal. So there's a canal that connects Lake Erie with Lake Ontario. So to get the ships from one lake to the other, they built this canal. So there's a lot of spaces and areas where they need a tunnel to go underneath the canal for traffic and whatnot. So there are multiple tunnels in the St. Catharines regions, and in Thorold there are two very well-known haunted ones. The first one, you can look it up on Google, is simply known as the Screaming Tunnel. I've had personal experiences with that one. It is definitely a creepy place, easy to visit. It's on public land, so even if you go at night, it's totally fine. Highly recommend a visit. There is a Google map marker for the Screaming Tunnel. But the other one is the one I want to focus on today, has been deemed the name Blue Ghost Tunnel. So historically, this very impressive structure, beautiful structure, it was known as the Meriton Tunnel. And you can look up historical photos of that. Now, the Blue Ghost term came from a former paranormal investigator. I used to know his name. Actually, I used to know him by reputation. It was around the same time that I was first getting into the field. And for the life of me, I can't remember his name, but take my word for it. So what he did is he was one of the first people to visit the tunnel in an investigative capacity, and he took a photo of the entrance, and in the photo was this blue mist that was almost like the shape of a person. If anybody's seen the ghost photo, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall, look it up. It kind of looked like that. So a blue mist in front of the tunnel, and this photo became viral before the term viral was even around, and it got nicknamed Blue Ghost Tunnel because of it. Now, the history behind it could support a ghostly experience, The tunnel itself was only really built as a temporary solution. I'm not sure if the article I'm about to read you includes that, but there was a very bad train wreck that happened in it. So, instead of me just trying to explain it in my haphazard way, I have an article here in front of me. Scrolling up. All right. This is from the St. Catharines Standard, newspaper in St. Catharines. The article is from Saturday, January 3rd, 1903. Now, it's been edited for space and flow. They talked back then. They gave a lot of extra details. Titled Bad Train Wreck. Number 4 Express collides with a light mogul near Meryton Tunnel. On the Grand Trunk Railway line near Meryton, a fatal accident occurred today at around 7:03 a.m. Engine number 975 left Niagara Falls at 6 a.m. It was set to run through Hamilton. The engine number 4 express train was scheduled for Meryton at 6:28 a.m. As nearly as can be learned, it was 7:03 a.m. when the express train passed a telegraph station near the tunnel. A few moments later, engine 4 and engine 975 met with a terrible crash. Both engines in full steam at 22 miles per hour. The engineers escaped with only broken limbs and minor cuts to face and arms. Sadly, though, Mr. Charles Horning, fireman of engine number 4, was killed instantly. The reporter described his body as, and note, it's going to get a little bit gruesome. The reporter described his body as being jammed in the boiler and mangled. When rescuers tried to free Horning's body, pulling his limbs, they broke off. Now, some remains were taken away. His midsection was so wedged it could not be freed, and rescuers gave a really interesting note about his wristwatch, saying his wristwatch was still working, which is kind of a strange way to look at it. The other fireman on the other engine, 975, he also died, but not on the scene. He said that he smashed into the boiler of his train and received burns to 90% of his body. He was rushed to the St. Catharines General Hospital, and he died 5 hours later. That man's name was Abraham Dussault. So, tragic accident inside of a historic tunnel. And over the years, the energy of people being around it, maybe visiting it, and eventually being brought to light by Creepy Canada, which was a Canadian paranormal show back in the day. And the best special effects you could ever see, and that was sarcasm, by the way. It was a very fun show, though. All of the investigations that were brought in, the energy, you would think that the place is haunted. Now, I do have a personal experience at it, and this was before it kind of blew up, before Creepy Canada came and did the show. I heard about it through the famous ghost photo, and we visited, and we were doing a kind of a makeshift investigation. I was inside the tunnel. It's very dark. And there was a thunderstorm that was starting outside, so we're all kind of, tense in the moment. And I remember somebody else pointed towards the entrance of the tunnel, which was maybe 25, 30 feet away from us, and they said, look at the movement. Now I looked over, and it was kind of far, and I could see a movement. And yeah, it did look like an animal, like a dog, or it could have been a coyote or something like that, moving back and forth. And it's like, okay, let's go investigate this. Paranormal investigators will put life and limb, even if it is a coyote, we'll run towards it just to make sure. And we ran, and I could see this thing moving the closer I got, and then it just kind of faded away. It didn't run off. It just kind of faded away. And we got to the edge of the tunnel. There was nothing. And there's small hills that go up from the edge, because you actually have to walk down to get into the tunnel. And nothing really could have jumped and ran up the hill without us seeing it, because we were so close and it was still there. And then it faded away and it was gone. We would have heard the rustling. We would have saw it running away. But there was nothing. The one thing I do remember that I still feel the pain of it right now is when we first saw the dog. I started running. Now I'm about 6 feet, 6'1", which is not cohesive with the Blue Ghost Tunnel. If anybody's visitor has seen pictures, there's these massive wooden beams that come down, and because I think they were put in, of course, after, no train could get through with these beams to support the stone, and as well, the tunnel is sinking into the ground, that a 6-foot person is perfect to smash into the beams with their head. And that's exactly what I did. So I'm running towards the entrance to see this supposed ghost dog, and I smashed my head on one of the beams. I probably lost my piano lessons at that point, but if I did have them, I don't remember, so that's okay. Now, that experience with the dog, and other people have mentioned having experiences there, but for the most part, there hasn't been a lot of investigators visiting it, and one of the main reasons why is because the area is watched very closely by its owners for trespassing. Now, the angry kid who thinks that everything should be handed to them and is not happy if they're told you can't do this, you might not like that. So they're coming forward and saying, don't come here, don't trespass. If you do, we will fine you or arrest you or whatever. I didn't really fully understand why they were so strict when it came to that until I visited. And here's my explanation for why they are strict. It is not just because of reliability reasons, which most people will attribute it to. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It is liability reasons for not what you think. So it's not liability reasons for the idiot who smacks his head off the beam like I did. It is liability reasons for another reason that you probably didn't guess. As I mentioned, these tunnels are built to go underneath the Welland Canal so people can get through in trains and cars and whatever. So there is a Welland Canal lock over top the Meriton Tunnel. But here's the thing with it. It's an abandoned lock. So when we went there, it was daytime. Thank God it was daytime, because as you're walking down the path, if you stay to the right, it will take you down the hill to the Meriton Tunnel. If you turn to the left, you'd be dead. Like you would probably not survive that at night if you didn't know what you were walking towards. I don't know if they fixed it since, but when I went there, this is the case. The abandoned Welland Canal lock, which is completely drained of water, is just sitting there open. And so if you turn to the left and walk, you will fall. Now, I don't know how deep it is, but it is deep. Like think maybe a 20-story building deep. So it's like falling off the side of a 20-story building. I am deathly afraid of heights, especially in these types of situations. And what I did is I got on my hands and knees and I crawled over to look over the edge. And it's just that freaked me the heck out. And I remember when I looked down at the bottom, and I know there's a story behind this, never found out why, but there was an old rusted out Ford Topaz car down there just kind of sitting. Like from my viewpoint, it was almost like looking at those old dinky cars, little toy cars. It was like looking at one of those. So for that reason, I understand why whoever owns the land, it was the Seaway at the time, why they would be so hesitant to have trespassers there, because one wrong turn and the person's dead. So they went to many different levels to threatening to call the cops, and at one point they were doing I think this was like an official way to get people away. They were vandalizing cars. So if you parked a car nearby, which was the main parking area, your car would most likely be vandalized, and that was a way to discourage, I think. I don't know for sure. My conspiracy theory. But in the end, I really kind of have to say that I don't recommend a visit to the Blue Ghost Tunnel in the sense of the paranormal. It doesn't seem like to be a very active place. Again, it wasn't used for very long. And yes, that accident did occur there, but one accident and doesn't make a truly tragically haunted place. It is wonderful to visit for the architecture. I don't know if they'd have any architecture tours for the tunnels of St. Catharines. I think that's a wonderful idea. I'm not going to do it, but if somebody else wanted to jump in and do it, where you had controlled visits with tours, and then you could see it in person, maybe one day it'll happen, because historically it is a wonderful piece and deserves to be kept. And that's one of the other reasons why I tell people not to visit it unofficially, because in a way you're leading to its demise. Because how it looked at the beginning, decently respectful, to how it looks now, unless they've cleaned it up with graffiti and damage. They tried to put a wall in front of it, which got knocked down. It's just this fight to be able to visit it on your own and have whatever freedoms you might be thinking of is almost in a way killing it. And this is a kind of history that I think should be saved, because it is an impressive architectural feat. But that's it. That's all I'll say about it. I've said my piece. No politics on this show. So with that note, I will pause again, see if something happens. You possessed yet? I really am not wishing for that. I think you'll be okay. I think we'll all be okay after this is done. Speaking of, we are at the final segment of the podcast here. I am now going to talk about this week in strange news. And for this, I have picked a story that is in regards to Colorado's Stanley Hotel. And I kind of already spoiled it earlier. Stephen King's favorite hotel, where he stayed and he wrote the book The Shining. So the hotel was the inspiration for the Overlook in the book. So I have an article here that I want to read. I love it. Personally, Stephen King, very near and dear to my own heart. One of my favorite authors, hands down. Just getting comfortable. Okay. Spooky story behind Colorado's haunted Stanley Hotel. Now, if you want to look it up for yourself, it is on a website called OutThereColorado.com. If you do a search for that, Out There Colorado, and the title Spooky Story Behind, I'm sure it will come up. It is by an author known as Stephanie Earls. Beautiful picture here. In the fall of 1974, writer Stephen King and his wife stopped for the night at an old hotel overlooking the city. Once among the grand dames of the West, the Stanley had fallen on hard times and was a ghost of its former self. Upon arriving, the Kings learned the hotel was closing for the winter and only a skeleton crew remained. Sound familiar? Nonetheless, the couple was checked into room 217. That's if you watch any of the side note, if you watch any of the documentaries on it, that number I believe is the one that has some strange meaning to it. The presidential suite, as the only paying guest in the building. Actually, sorry, I'm not sure it was 217. Give me one sec. I know this is not good podcasting. 217. The Shining. Oh, that's why I'm confused. Okay, so 217 is the number that Stephen King attributed as being a special number because that was his room. Stanley Kubrick changed it to 237 for whatever reason. There is actually no 237 in the Stanley, so that couldn't have anything to do with it. I don't know. I'm sure Kubrick had his reason. That's a great movie. Continuing on with the article. That night, the author had a nightmare in which he saw his young son being chased down the hotel's long, empty corridors by a predatory, possessed fire hose. Oh man, Stephen King. He woke drenched in sweat and stepped to the balcony to smoke a cigarette. By the time he stubbed it out, he worked out the bones of what would become his third novel and first bestseller, The Shining. There's a picture here looking inside. It's got these creepy portraits and some cool mirrors on the stairwell. King's nightmare turned out to be a sweet dream and breath of life for the historic landmark that served as inspiration for the fictional Overlook Hotel. The surge in spectrally motivated tourism after the book was published in 1977 still goes strong, thanks in part to the 1980 film adaptation directed by Stanley Kubrick and starring Jack Nicholson. That movie, widely considered one of the scariest ever made, plays non-stop on a designated channel at the upscale hotel 90 minutes northwest of Denver. That's cool. Why not? Why not? You have something that you're really known for, just lean into it. On the night of my stay, this is the author of the article talking. On the night of my stay, I could choose between King's cinematic Fright Fest or the one playing out a few channels away at the second presidential debate while I waited for an 8 p.m. show by illusionist Aidan Sinclair, followed by a ghost tour through the hotel's darkened corridors, basements, and off-limit areas. Sorry, that's a personal note from the author. But it's cool to know there's a ghost tour. Figured there would be. In paranormal pursuits, as in politics, fear is all about what you choose to pay attention to. The Stanley is a shining example of how and where to make you look. Historic hotels history. Now, this is the part I was looking forward to. The Stanley earned a reputation as a paranormal nerve center long before King's arrival at the hotel, which was completed in 1909 by an elite 420 retreat by entrepreneur and inventor F.O. Stanley, co-founder of the Stanley Motor Carriage Company. During the years since his death in 1940, the apparition of Mr. Stanley reportedly has appeared to guests checking out the reception desk, and claims hold that the phantom of the late Flora Stanley, a pianist, sometimes can be heard tickling the ivories in the empty music room. Now, when some spots are more spiritually active than others, guests have reported strange occurrences. Shadowy figures, eerie laughter, flickering lights, and items moving on their own. These are all very standard experiences at hotels especially. One that comes to mind is the Prince of Wales Hotel in Niagara-on-the-Lake, the ghost tour that Ghost Walks does, and the story of the footsteps heard through the room and flickering lights, and I'm sure all the other stuff I mentioned. Items moving on their own in every room on the hotel compound, which includes a century-old lodge and concert hall. In recent decades, the campus has hosted countless paranormal investigations, including teams from the Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures and Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters. Pros aren't the only ones who get to play here. Overnight visitors opting for the Ghost Adventure package, seriously, I wonder what that includes, are assigned a room on the infamous 4th floor. They're given a pocket-sized EMF reader, electromagnetic field reader, and other ghostly gaff, including a mug. That's awesome. Bearing the chilling message, "Red rum." Right. Oh man, that is leading into it. I love it. Okay, now I want to go. Red rum, made famous by the King's, by Stephen King's novel, and of course the movie. Okay, quote, "I always tell my tour group I've investigated castles, dungeons, and buildings older than the U.S., and the Stanley is on the top of that list," said author and part-time paranormal investigator Richard Estep, who led ghost tours on the weekends. A native of Leicester, England, Estep grew up in a He grew up in a haunted house and never gave up on the ghosts. To him personally, but it left him with a passion for the otherworldly. In 21 years of investigating for books and television shows on both sides of the Atlantic, Estep has spent time living in England's oldest witches prison and a haunted hospital in Utah. And a new TV show covering some of his more intriguing cases is airing Sundays on Destination America. Now note, this is an article from 2019, so if you look it up, it might not be there. I hope it is. We need more ghost shows. He continues, I'm convinced the Stanley is one of the more active locations out there. They deeply love this hotel. I assume he means the ghosts. As haunting goes, the hotel is something of a phenomenon. Usually haunted locations, this is Estep, usually haunted locations have a history with lots of blood and death, but the Stanley doesn't have that, which often takes people aback. They want to know how many deaths have occurred here, and it's about as many as other hotels. Not that many. So that's an interesting and very dark angle when it comes to ghostly activity. Most people say that tragic death leads to ghost stories, but in my personal opinion, yes, that does cause a burst of emotional energy that can make a place haunted, but that it can also be somebody's love for a location. So like the guy who built the hotel, for example, is coming back because I'm almost positive this would have been a passion project for him. So he comes back because he loves the place. So that's another occurrence too. But the article continues. I guess it's going to go down the road of tragedy, which is what a lot of these articles do. Continuing on. The location certainly has seen trauma. However, in the 1920s, a gas leak led to an explosion in room 217. Really? That destroyed the second floor above the main dining hall and nearly killed a chambermaid, Elizabeth Wilson. That's interesting. 217 is the room that Stephen King stayed in. Maybe they put him in there for that reason? Elizabeth Wilson, a chambermaid, almost died. She ultimately recovered and returned to her job, which she held until her death at the age of 90 at her home in Estes Park. Soon after, the hotel started receiving reports of a spectral chambermaid hovering and walking through closed doors in the rebuilt guest quarters. Unmarried couples sharing a bed complained of an invisible force wedging them apart as they slept, and single men woke to find their bags had been packed and left outside the door. It's very considerate of her, and I like her traditional feelings. This is Estep again. Mrs. Wilson does what she wants, to who she wants. Sounds like it. Despite numerous reported sightings of spectral youths on the hotel's 4th floor and erstwhile attic space, records show no child ever died there. Estep continues, places get ghosts for different reasons, such as tragedy or bloodshed, but also people tend to haunt places where they were very happy during their lifetime. Okay, that's what I mentioned earlier. I respect this guy very much. It's a good thing to say. I sense we're seeing people coming back because they deeply love this hotel. Now, generally speaking, this is the article, wherever you find people, you find ghosts, vice versa. Daniel Moon, 11, and her parents traveled to Estes Park from Fort Morgan to see the famous elk and hear their loud, distinctive bulging. Bugling. They came to the Stanley for some sightseeing of a different nature. Hoping for a paranormal experience, the family set out to wander the hotel when they met a member of the cleaning staff who shared insights about the place's non-corporeal guests. This is the child talking, Daniel Moon. She said they don't like vacuums, said Moon, who struck up a conversation with me in the audience before an illusionist show. This is the author talking to the girl. The little girl leaned in and added, in an excited stage whisper, the ghosts hate it when vacuums are on, so they turn them off. Kind of sounds like my dog. He also doesn't like the sound of vacuums. All things considered, I replied, this sounds kind of like my kind of spooks. Okay, so the next section, all of a matter of perception. I'm just going to try and continue with this. I don't want to take too much time with it. An avowed skeptic and America's Got Talent alum, Aidan Sinclair joined the Stanley as a regular headline in early 2015 with his show Illusions of the Past. In it, he weaves history and illusion with ghost stories, inspiring by a change-up lineup of haunted historic artifacts, many of which once belonged to the famous early hotel guests. On the night that the author of the article attended, the collection included a bosun's whistle carried by an ill-fated Titanic crew member and a pearl from a necklace beloved of turn-of-the-century soprano Eva Cavallari. It's all a matter of perception, Sinclair said. If you believe in the paranormal and you're holding a key that you know opened the gate of the cemetery where the victims of Jack the Ripper are buried, that has power and meaning to you. True. The illusionist's goal isn't so much scares, but amazement and backstory, so his audience can walk through the lobby after the show and appreciate those who walked there before them, he said. Now, I do 100% agree with that. It's one of the reasons why I love telling ghost stories. It kind of like connects the history, right? So when you go to a location, it sticks in your mind a bit more, and you really feel the history more. Appreciating the ghosts of the Stanley requires an understanding of who they were in real life. It's a real magical place in the sense where people experience some of the happy moments of their lives, weddings, engagements, soldiers back from the war, sitting on the porch drinking whiskey with your friends. This Sinclair, he was an admirer of escape artist and spiritual debunker Harry Houdini. And he says, like Houdini, he considers himself an open-minded and inquisitive disbeliever, especially after his stint working at the hotel. He continues that interesting things happen at the Stanley Hotel, and at a certain point, if all the experiences are the same, when so many witnesses have the same experience and they've had no contact and don't know one another, it's an intriguing thing. At what point do the numbers validate the reporting? Exactly what I said earlier. I love that, is when many different people have the same experience with the same type of ghost, I'll add. Hoaxing is a fireable offense at the Stanley. I am so happy to hear that. So if you witness something strange, you know who not to blame. Now, Richard Estep, back to him, is quick to explain that many supposed ghostly encounters are simply the creaks, ticks, and quirks of the Grand Lady herself, still settling after more than a century atop her Rocky Mountain bedrock. He said that the first thing to think of is all the old doors and old frames in the hotel, that you step on just the right spot, you might close a door. That's a good thought. Second thing is wind. There'd be a lot of breezes coming through that can close doors and move things too. So oftentimes rational explanations cannot come so easily. So I'm going to see. Okay, not much left. Just one more section. I was going to stop, but I want to hear these rational explanations. They're kind of going back into the thing being haunted again, which is what we want. Continues. Comes as no surprise that the hotel's most requested room, 217, is the one where King stayed on the fateful night, and also a space that allegedly drove Jim Carrey to flee in the middle of the night, never to return, when the actor was on location filming 1994's Dumb and Dumber. Oh, really? Oh, was it... I looked that up. Dumb and Dumber Hotel. Film location. Stanley Hotel. The lavish Danbury Hotel in which Harry and Lloyd stay and treat themselves to a Lamborghini too after dipping into the case of money is the Stanley Hotel. Inspiration for The Overlook and Stephen King, blah, 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 blah. So that's cool. So the haunted Stanley Hotel is where they were in the Dumb and Dumber movie, I assume, is the first one. 1994. So Jim Carrey fled his room 217 in the middle of the night, never to return. The Stanley's true ghost central and most notorious active locale is 2 floors up, however. When King visited, he supposedly had a run of the empty hotel and wandered up here where it was wide open attics stretching from dormer to far dormer, dimly lit and filled with sheet-draped furniture. Today it holds 25 guest rooms, including mine, this is the author of the article, room 413, at the peak of the hotel's southwest corner with views of the front grounds. It was after midnight by the time the ghost tour ended, and I made my way back upstairs, this is the author talking, past the second floor landing outside room 217, where a group of adults sat cross-legged on the floor, heads bent over cell phone cameras and EMF meters. They looked up. I nodded a good luck with the ghosts and continued on to my room at the top of the stairs. In true historic fashion, the main house of the Stanley is not air-conditioned. So first thing I'd done after arriving in the stuffy top-floor space was open the windows. Surely a gust through one of them is what swept the door closed behind me with a soul-jarring slam. And there's certainly a practical and rational explanation why, a few minutes later, I heard a quiet click and turned to see the same door slowly opening on an empty hallway. As Mr. Estep said, "It's an old building. There's no straight lines." I rewatched a few scenes of The Shining for good measure, killed the TV, and must have finally dripped off. I'm hoping that right now, because they said The Shining is playing in the lobby, I just thought maybe every TV in the hotel is also playing The Shining just on loop. You actually don't have any other stations, just The Shining. That would make me happy if that were the case. I'd go. I rewatched a few scenes of The Shining for good measure, killed the TV, and must have finally drifted off. That is, until a blood-curdling shriek ripped me back awake, prickling with adrenaline. The scream came again, echoing through the sleepy valley outside my windows. It sounded like a child in terror for his life. And I wonder if Stephen King heard the elk too. You got me all scared and then brought me back. It's just an elk, screaming elk. All right, that's it for the article here. And I guess that's it for the podcast. I'd like to remind everybody that if you're listening, you want to discuss, chat, questions, whatever, love to do that kind of stuff. Ghost Guide Daniel on Facebook. You can message me through there or shoot me an email at ggdaniel@ghostwalks.com. And it's been my absolute pleasure doing the podcast today, and I wish everybody a great rest of your week.